The morning sun was pale, hiding behind a thin veil of clouds, as if even the heavens hesitated to shine on this day. Outside the courthouse, chaos reigned. Cameras flashed endlessly. Reporters shouted questions that no one would answer, and barricades trembled under the weight of crowds. Fans gathered shoulder to shoulder, their voices splitting the air, some chanting justice for the victims, others clinging desperately to Diddy's name, as if repeating it could undo what was about to unfold. The atmosphere was electric. It wasn't just another trial. It was a spectacle, a battle between legacy and accountability. Some came to witness history, others to demand justice, but all felt the same tension. Inside, the energy was just as sharp. Every seat was filled. Journalists leaned forward with pens ready, and families of victims gripped each other's hands, waiting for a moment that had been years in the making. The air itself seemed heavier, pressing down on every soul in that courtroom. Then, with a groan of wood and metal, the courtroom doors opened. Silence swept across the chamber like a cold wind. Shawn "Diddy" Combs entered, not as the mogul who had built an empire of music, fashion, and fame, but as a prisoner. His orange jumpsuit clung to him like a scarlet letter. His wrists and ankles bore the weight of iron chains, rattling softly with every step. There was no swagger, no diamond chains, no entourage of celebrities trailing behind. This was a man stripped of everything but his past. The cameras clicked furiously, immortalizing an image no one ever thought they would see. Every step he took echoed with finality, announcing that the era of invincibility was over. Once a king of hip-hop, Diddy now stood as nothing more than a defendant, fragile, exhausted, and staring directly into the face of judgment. This was not just a local trial. It was a global moment. Across the world, people tuned in. Families in New York muted their televisions, straining to hear every word. In barber shops across Los Angeles, men stopped mid-conversation, eyes glued to the screen. In London pubs, strangers debated whether this was justice or betrayal. In Lagos classrooms, young students whispered to each other about how the mighty had fallen. In Tokyo, commuters paused on platforms, phones in hand, watching live updates roll across their screens. On social media, the storm was relentless. Twitter threads exploded, TikTok lives buzzed with raw reactions, and hashtags climbed to the top of global charts within minutes. Arguments ignited. Some insisted he was innocent, a victim of a system that targeted powerful black men. Others declared this was the reckoning they had been waiting for, the proof that even the untouchable could fall. For the first time, the world was united not by music, but by judgment. When the prosecutor rose, the tension was so sharp it could have been cut with a knife. His voice was steady, measured, but each word struck like a hammer. He did not accuse Diddy of one mistake. He accused him of a pattern, a legacy of choices that had left pain in their wake. He painted scenes in vivid detail, glittering parties that began with champagne and applause but ended with fear and silence. He spoke of nights where laughter turned into screams, of promises that dissolved into threats. He carried the voices of the victims into that room, voices that had been ignored, silenced, or buried for years. And then his voice rose, echoing against the wooden walls of the courtroom. "If we let this man walk free," he declared, "then fame becomes a shield and money a weapon. If we excuse this, then justice itself becomes meaningless." Today is not only about Shawn Combs. Today is about every victim who thought their voice didn't matter. Today is about proving that no man, no matter how powerful, is above the law. Gasps broke out across the room. Some jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Even reporters, hardened by years of covering tragedy, paused their pens to look up. The weight of his words lingered, thick in the air. Diddy's defense team rose slowly, their suits sharp, their words polished. They spoke of his achievements, his legacy, the empire he had built from nothing. They described him as the embodiment of the American dream, a man who turned struggle into triumph, who inspired millions with his music, who lifted others as he climbed. They tried to remind the court of the mogul who once redefined hip-hop, who created opportunities for countless artists, who brought joy and pride to fans across the globe. They pleaded for the man behind the headlines, the father, the visionary, the cultural icon. But their words fell flat. The evidence was too heavy, the testimonies too raw. The victims' stories echoed louder than the polished speeches of the defense. Sympathy, once abundant for Diddy, had withered away under the harsh light of truth. What remained was a courtroom unmoved, unconvinced, and unwilling to forget. Then came the voice that mattered most. The judge leaned forward, his hands resting on the bench, his expression carved from stone. When he spoke, the room froze. "Mr. Combs," he began, his tone deliberate and calm, "you were given every advantage, talent, wealth, influence. You stood as an example to millions. Yet instead of using those gifts to uplift, you used them to exploit. You betrayed not only individuals but the very culture that celebrated you. You turned power into a weapon. And for that, you must be held accountable." Each word landed with the weight of history. Families of victims nodded silently, their eyes filled with tears. Reporters scribbled furiously, aware that these sentences would become headlines across the world. Diddy sat motionless, staring into a future that had already been written for him. His empire was collapsing, not with a bang, but with the calm, unyielding voice of justice. The moment came. The gavel struck. The air cracked with finality, and the judge delivered the words that would echo for generations. Decades in prison. The room erupted. Gasps, cries, even applause broke out. Some wept with relief, others with sorrow, and many simply sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. This was not a light sentence. It was not a symbolic punishment. It was the harshest sentence hip-hop had ever seen. A hammer brought down on a man once thought untouchable. Diddy closed his eyes, his shoulders sagging under the weight of years yet to come. His chains rattled softly, the faint metallic sound replacing the cheers of arenas and the applause of fans. For the first time, Shawn Combs was not in control. His empire had ended with a single verdict. Outside the courthouse, chaos exploded. Protesters shouted until their throats were raw. Fans collapsed in tears, and media vans broadcasted the moment live across continents. Hashtags ignited instantly, climbing to the top of global trends. Talk shows debated, radio hosts wept on air, and musicians across the industry scrambled to make statements. Some distancing themselves, others expressing sorrow. On the streets, speakers still blared his music, but it no longer felt the same. Lyrics once filled with triumph now rang hollow, twisted by the weight of truth. Some vowed never to play his songs again. Others argued that art and artist must be separated. But even in disagreement, one thing was certain: the culture would never be the same. For the victims, it was validation, a moment of long-awaited justice. For the fans, it was heartbreak. For the hip-hop community, it was a scar that would remain forever. A reminder that idols could fall and legends could break. The guards moved to take him away. They lifted him to his feet, and the chains clinked louder than any applause he had ever received. Cameras followed him as he shuffled out, his head bowed, his empire reduced to dust in a matter of minutes. This was the man who once shouted to the world, "Can't stop, won't stop." And yet, here he was, stopped cold, silenced by justice, chained by the very system he thought he had outgrown. The empire was gone, the legend undone. His name would no longer stand as a symbol of success, but as a warning carved into history. The hardest sentence in hip-hop had been delivered, and the fall of Diddy was complete.